Today I want to talk about the kind of house we buy, because it seems to me that that's the biggest way to become enslaved. So-called normal these days is wanting a big house with the right address, the big value. So we can join the brotherhood, or maybe it's a sisterhood of slaves, to a 30-year mortgage. And on top of that, pay increasing property taxes and insurances. Normal is ever increasing house sizes but shrinking family sizes. And then, instead of being filled with people and laughter, houses are filled with less presence, less connection, less community, but more stuff. More worry, depression, anxiety, and bathroom closets and bedside tables that are overflowing with medication. We're all told that having a big house is a sign of affluence. Of course, we know that isn't always true, because what you see on the outside doesn't always reflect what you'd see on the bank balance. But as Wendell Berry says in The Art of Commonplace in the Agrarian Essays, the freedom of affluence opposes and contradicts the freedom of community life. And that's an interesting thought, because I can't help thinking that we aren't even aware of some of the freedoms that we lose as we become more affluent. Normal is drooling over furniture catalogues so we can expand our debt, to buy the items, to fill the big house with stuff we spend more time dusting and cleaning than enjoying. So we can spend more money protecting all the stuff with insurances, fences, gates, and expensive electronic systems. Do you see how having more restricts our freedom, makes us feel like we've got more to lose? Of course, the ultimate irony in buying all this stuff and spending all this money that makes our bank balances smaller, and spending all the money to protect it, that's the same stuff that will one day be tossed out before it's even worn out, so we can have something more up-to-date or fashionable, so that our already overburdened landfills can grow larger and larger. Normal is seldom opening windows and instead worrying about our too high utility bills, because in the heating and cooling of this too big house, we keep it at just the optimal temperature, so we can wear t-shirts even in winter, so that our body forgets how to regulate its own temperature naturally. And in another twist, for days, months and years, we work like slaves on a treadmill and lose sleep stressing about affording the mortgage, the taxes, the insurances, the utilities, the payments for the furniture and the knickknacks we bought on credit to fill the house, the still heated and cooled house we're mainly absent from. Now people live more or less on their own, jealously guarding their goods and planning to acquire more, with a notice on the gate that says, "Beware of the dog." Yet birds build nests, ants build anthills, and beavers build lodges, while primitive societies, so-called, know how to build their own homes without spending a penny at a Home Depot or a Lowe's to buy tools or materials. They still know how to fashion their own implements even, and use building materials found in their environment, right below their feet and everywhere around them. Unlike us, rattling around in our mausoleums, they build their homes tight and cozy, never needing bigger or better, but just enough for their needs. As one of my favorite architects, Hundertwater, says, in our modern functional architecture, allegedly constructed for the human being, man's soul is perishing, oppressed. And us Westerners who consider ourselves to be top of the food and intelligence chains, we have no clue how to build our own shelters. For us, normal is having a house of boards and beams, often soulless boxes, built not by our intuition and our wisdom or by the connection of our hearts and our hands, and certainly not by ourselves or our collective communities, but by contractors with noisy machines. As Hundertwater says, the architect has no relationship to the building, the bricklayer has no relationship to the building, the tenant has no relation to the structure. He has not built it, but only moved into it. In the meanwhile, what we arrogantly consider to be backward societies and the lesser-than-man animal kingdom build custom-made, naturally ventilated, safe and durable shelters, devoid of toxic commercial products, with no help from architects, building codes, or regulatory officials. As Hundertwater says, Current manufactured constructions should not be considered architecture. Man has to regain the critical creative function he has lost, and without which he ceases to exist as a human being. Think about tract homes. Isn't standardization just us conforming to rules and regulations that make us sit into similar little boxes that rob us of creativity, all in the name of efficiency and profits? Everyone should be able to build and thus be truly responsible for the four walls in which he lives. If such a fantastic structure built by the tenants themselves collapses, it will usually creak beforehand anyway, so that the people will be able to escape. But from then on, the tenant will bolster the walls and beams with his own hands if they seem too fragile to him. I love what John Dai, an organic farmer from Thailand, says. I want to be equal to the animals. The bird makes a nest in 1 or 2 days. The rat digs a hole in 1 night. But clever humans like us spend 30 years to have a house, and that's wrong. And of course, if we settled for smaller and simpler houses that didn't need all the engineering, we would be able to build our own homes. Because here's the crux of the matter, as E.F. Schumacher says. Any intelligent fool can make things bigger, more complex, and more violent. It takes a touch of genius and a lot of courage to move in the opposite direction, especially in this culture of ours that always thinks that bigger is better. But we can change that. We can opt out. Because, as Jim Hightower says, the opposite for courage isn't cowardice, it's conformity. Even a dead fish can go with the flow. What would it take for you to opt out of the bigger is better belief and buy into the idea that less is more? We don't need more space, we need less stuff. Less house equals more home. The secret of happiness is not found in having more, but in developing the capacity to be happy with less, as Socrates tells us. My wish for you is that your home is always too small to hold all your friends, and may the right address be the one where you know and appreciate your neighbors.